Welcome to the Overcoming Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Today's guest is J.R. Spears. He's a combat veteran, he's a speaker, an author, and a man who's been through his own fair share of adversities in life. And he's here to tell us about his story. And it's only appropriate from another veteran to have another veteran here on the show. I can't wait to get on this conversation. Hey, JR, welcome to the Overcoming Adversity podcast, man. It's a pleasure to have you here, brother.
Dude, I'm excited for this. Thank you for inviting me and having me as a guest on your show.
Absolutely, man. So I really excited about getting into this because I know that in the Marine Corps, for me, when I served, man, we live by all of these codes and these ethics and these principles. And you've empowered some of these things and translated with your transition into the business world, man. And I just want to talk to you about that because I feel like your message is so impactful, man. It could help so many of our listeners. Yeah. You have a guiding principle, brother, that's called CREED: commitment, resistance, excellence, execution, and discipline. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to you and how that enveloped into your story, man?
Yeah. So first off, it's commitment and resilience is the second part of it. But when I grew up in the family-owned business in the martial arts, and when you grow up in the martial arts, we're always talking about having black belt excellence. Everything that you do, you need to give your best, no matter what, even when no one's watching. It's about having integrity, having courtesy, having that discipline to be able to show up and do what we're supposed to be doing and doing the right thing all the time. That's having black belt excellence. And so same thing for growing up from the martial arts and then going to the military and then starting my own martial arts school and fitness business. There was just a day that I remember just sitting down. I was like, what can I do to create something that instills the core values inside of myself, but also what I would expect of my clients? And so I'm writing down all these different words. And it was like, hey, you know what? You must be committed. You must be resilient because we're going to go through hard times. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be difficult things that we're going to go through. And you being a Marine, you understand. It's like, hey, you know what? We don't always feel great, but a war doesn't stop when you're in the middle of a firefight and you get to say, hey, I'm tired. I don't want to do it, but we got to push through even when the fire's coming at us. But it's having that, always showing up and giving your best and having that excellence. It's having the, showing up, taking that daily action, which is the execution, because action creates momentum that leads to success. And if we don't show up and take that daily action, well, then nothing's ever going to happen. I mean, a lot of people out there, they're so good at getting all these tools in their toolbox to do all these different things, but they never take the tools out to actually implement. You got all these people that are event junkies or they're self-development junkies or people that just go out there and learn and they grow. And that's all good. We need to do that. But if you're not going to actually take it and implement and use it, then what's the point? We have to take daily action. And the last piece, which is discipline. And it's not just having that physical discipline saying, I'm not going to eat that cookie that's on the table to reach my goals, but it's having that mental and the physical discipline to complete the mission. In the military, we learn very firsthand. It's like, hey, you know what? We have to condition this up here. We have to condition the way we think, the way that we act, the way that we can respond. So that way, when we are in the middle of that fight, we can react without thinking. And that's having that emotional and that physical discipline to be able to do what we need to do. So when I was writing down all these keywords and the core values, it came down. I was like, hey, you know what? This is CREED. Like, this is exactly what I want it to be. And it came up with the acronym. And you being a Marine, you understand how much we need something to remember key things and turn them into an acronym. So it makes it simple. And so I adopted the name and started CREED. I forget what year it was. It's probably 2018 or 19. And really been running with that ever since. And it's a good reminder for myself on making sure that I'm showing up and doing the things that I need to do to make sure I complete my mission. But it's also the core values that I want to instill in all my clients. And there's one key question that I always ask everyone is, what is that one thing that you are most committed to, that you're going to be resilient even through the most difficult times, showing up every day, giving your best, and having that mental and physical discipline to complete your mission? So I always challenge people. It's like, hey, you know what? What is your CREED? What is that one thing? What is that thing that you're going to be focused on? What is that mission that you're going to go after? Because without purpose, without something to really set your eyes on and really stay laser focused to be able to go after, it's really hard to achieve anything, because even scripture says, without vision, we will perish. So we need to have that vision. We need to have that purpose. We need to have that goal of what we're going to achieve. And it's keeping your eyes forward on what that mission is. I mean, when we're training for combat, you stepping feet on those yellow footprints and, in boot camp from the first day, there's a purpose for that. There's a purpose to
Right.
train you to be a war fighting machine, to prepare you for what's to come. And it's not a matter of when, if you're going to go into war. We're all going to go to war sometime. Every Marine's a rifleman. So you got to learn how to fight. You got to learn how to think. You got to learn how to respond. You got to learn how to, take orders and being part of a community and being part of a command to be able to complete one main mission. And until we get everyone into one single voice singing the same sound and the same page, you're just going to fail. So that's why it's so, so important to actually understand what that is and where you're going.
Man, I love that. I love that, man, because when we don't have our purpose and our mission and we don't have that alignment, we get so out of whack with some of the things that's going on within our lives. I want to ask you this, JR. Being someone that lives by a creed and you're doing this for yourself and for your client, can you talk a little bit about where did this actually start for you? Did this actually start with creating this mindset from the military, or did this start from early childhood where this was either instilled through your parents, through your family members, through sports and activities, just to carry this on into where you're doing things now, man?
It all stems from my early childhood. I mean, my mom always owned the martial arts school, and I grew up and adopted that. I competed on a national level. I was on a pro kickboxing team even through high school. And so learning to always excel with excellence and being committed to, and the discipline to even, condition my body to be able to go through what you do. And it was just an everyday lifestyle for me. I mean, I would lie if I tell you I had the perfect childhood and I was always a good kid that had the discipline. But, just like most children, I grew up in, very rebellious throughout my teenage years and was trying to figure out life. And the military is the only way for me to really get out of where I was at and what I was doing. And so even though I grew up in a very disciplined, structured environment, I went through the rebellious stage and ended up doing my own thing. But then the military really helped bring me back home and taught me how to be a man. I was a young boy when I went in, and then went in the military, and it was like, hey, you know what? You got to grow up. No one else is going to do it for you. And you're learned and taught different values and things that no other civilian will ever be able to relate to. I mean, that's why they say, I can't claim the title of a United States Marine. I was in the Navy, attached to the Marine Corps as an RP, a religious program specialist. So I can't claim that, but I will say the same core values, and all I know is what the Corps taught me. I went from Navy boot camp straight to Marine combat, training in a way, and then straight to the Marine units. And so all I know is what the core values that the Marine Corps taught me. And once you're trained and you're taught that, that's why they say once a Marine, always a Marine. It never leaves you, because it's instilled and it's part of who you are. And you end up becoming a completely different person than when you went in. So it's a combination from my childhood that led to my adulthood, that led to, even when I got out. I know you served some time in combat yourself and deployments and things like that, and it changes you. I mean, when we come back and we step foot outside of outside the uniform and go into the civilian life, the transition is tough. I mean, we lose our identity, we lose our purpose, we lose everything about who we are, and we have to really figure out what is that we're chasing after. What is the thing that's going to drive us to get us out of bed every day and do it? And as you know, not a lot of people can figure that out, and they end up taking their life and living and still fighting with those demons. And it's sad, but those that actually do succeed, we find purpose, we find something to really chase after. And the Marine Corps really gave that to me. They really showed me on how to be mission focused and really chase after that. When I have a mission that's set ahead of me and I'm focused, like there's no stopping me from what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it happen.
No doubt, man. I want to unpack something as I want to follow up to quite a few keynotes that you just said, man. If you could talk a little bit about why you served, what was that experience like for you, man? And can you talk a little bit about how did you gain some of like your leader skills? Now I could hear it. I know that you already have tons of those, but can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you, and what was some like the key leadership skills that you took away from that experience that you're now implementing in your business?
Oh my gosh, there's so many different things. But, I went in the military because honestly, my grandmother forced me to go in. I was in a very dark place in my life. I was being rebellious. And this is before I rededicated my life to Christ, and was, getting in trouble with the law, hanging out with the wrong people. And one day she came to my house. I skipped school and needed to get some money because I lost my license. I lost my job. I had a lot of tickets that I needed to pay with the, with the court and things like that for bails and stuff like that. And so I asked her, I said, "Hey, Grandma, can you drive me to some pawn shop so I can, sell some of my items to make some money to, pay off some of my debts?" And so she did. And I put some of my stuff in her car. We're driving with this in St. Louis where I lived. So we're driving down a main street called Limerick Boulevard in St. Louis. And she pulls around a shopping center. I'm like, "Grandma, you passed the pawn shop right there." She goes, "Don't worry about it. Just shut up. And I'm going to keep going." She pulls around She goes around the shopping center and pulls behind Best Buy, and there's another strip of things, and there is the recruiting station. And she says, "I don't care which branch you sign up for, but you're gonna walk in there, you're gonna sign up right now." And this is my junior year of high school. And I looked at her and I said, "You know what?" I paused for a minute. I was like, "I'm not gonna say no to my grandma." I knew I didn't want to go to college. The school was just not for me in my future. I mean, I was barely graduating high school. I think they just gave me a diploma because they knew I was going to the military. But I graduated with a 1.2 GPA out of high school, and which is not even showing up to classes. And so with that, I knew at the time that I would never go Army or Air Force. I just had this stigma about it because my uncle he was a Marine, and my grandfather retired Navy after 22 years, and I didn't want to go to the Marine Corps because I was like, you know what, they work too hard. I don't want to be all gung ho. I just want to go have some fun and see the world, and I thought the Navy was my easy way out. So I went in the Navy, and a year later, after I graduated high school, a lot happened between that time. I rededicated my life to Christ, went on a missions trip, and started getting my my focus together and things like that. But I went in, and during boot camp, I found out about the job. So here, I want to take a step back. This is a funny story because when I signed up, I thought the Marine Corps was too hard, so I didn't want to go in. And then when I went into boot camp, and I'm not lying about this, about what I'm going to tell you. When I went to boot camp, there was about 2 weeks in or something like that. And I was completely bored out of my mind. Like literally, I was like, "What the heck is this?" It's like, because I grew up in martial arts. So doing physical work or doing all this stuff, like this stuff was easy to me. And we're all standing in our, sleeping bay area. So we got about 70, 80 sailors in there, standing in front of our bedside. Our RDC, our drill instructor, was coming in there, tall guy, bald, just really scary looking at the time. And I go up and I said, "Is there any chance I can switch over to the Marine Corps? Because this isn't what I expected." And in front of everyone, he was completely speechless, didn't know what to say. He didn't know if he should haze me and slap me down. Turned around and just walked away. I was like, "Okay." And I just went back in front of my bunk and did it. So it was like around that same time, I found out about being either a corpsman or being an RP and being able to serve time with the Marines. And so I knew I didn't want to go corpsman because I just hated needles. Needles absolutely terrified me. I was like, I don't want to practice stick myself, because when you go to medical school with the corpsman, they practice giving you shots and IVs to each other. I'm like, I don't want to just be doing that and just sticking each other. So I was like, I don't want to be a corpsman. I don't want to be on the medical side. So I found out about being an RP, and that was the best decision ever. I mean, I got to play both cards every station I was at. If I want to go play with the Marines, I play with the Marines. If I want to go play with the corpsmen and the sailors, I hung out with them. It was the best. I mean, I did anything and everything I wanted to. I got all the training. I did a lot of my training with the recon units when I was out in First Marines, and just, dude, I just had some of the best experiences, like being able to fly in helicopters all over the ocean, over ships, and all over Iraq and the Middle East, and got to be on tracks and tanks and everything, and I got to do it all, and it was really cool. So, but going back to your question, so it was my grandmother that forced me to go in, and I had every intention of making a career out of it. And unfortunately, I only did 4 years, and I didn't have the best experience with my command on deployment, which kind of made me realize that I didn't want to continue. The dumb decision at the time, this would be my retirement year right now if I stayed in. So like, oh, if I would have stayed in, I would have done it. But, God had a different plan for me. But the leadership that I learned from there was, they kind of start, I'll use the word lightly, they brainwash you in a way to think differently for a purpose. But the reality is they're conditioning you to do a certain cause to help fulfill a certain purpose and mission of whatever that may be. So whatever your job is, you learn to do what it is. But one thing that I've learned as a leader in the military is a lot. And I'll break down really simple. One is chain of command. Like, you learn how to talk to people, you learn how to command people, and then you always learn how to take care of the people below you. So when you go in, you're a PFC, a Lance Corporal, whatever it may be, that Lance Corporal is taking care of that PFC, that Corporal is taking care of that Lance Corporal, and then everyone else. And so there's that level of care of learning to take care of your own. And you always put the troops first. So I still do that today. It's like when I go to a group party or I'm hosting an event or something like that, and everyone's getting food, I'm like, hey, troops eat first. And I let everyone eat and I let everyone do that. But that's a condition that I am taught. It's like, hey, you know what? I will eat the leftovers because I'm going to take care of my own. And that's a
Right.
big piece of it. It's like, even for your family, it's like you learn to take care of your family and you learn to sacrifice for yourself, because the leader is the person that's taking care of their people underneath them. So there's
Right.
that. Also, the Marine Corps is one of the greatest businesses ever developed. And I will argue that from till to the day that I die, because there's a system for every system. It does not matter where you go, anywhere in the world, and to be deployed. You can be stationed in Okinawa, you can be stationed in California with First Marines, you can be deployed anywhere in the world. You can step in, do your job, and execute it accordingly without the unit skipping a beat. Because we're
Right.
taught how to do our job, when to do it. We know who to talk to, how to talk to. We know where to find the certain help that we need to do. You got to go to S1 shop, S2, S3, S4. You know who to talk to when it comes to that. You know which company does what specific jobs. Everything is working as a system in a big machine to complete that one mission. And so as a leader, we first need to understand, how do we take care of our own? How do we communicate with each other? And then how do we actually run a machine and run an organization? And that's by utilizing and implementing systems and processes, SOPs, that keeps us on track, so that way we can teach the people underneath us. Because if there's no training, if there's no SOP, if there's no system in place to be able to do it, you're going to be a one-man show trying to figure it out and be burnt out, tired, and hate doing what you're doing for long term, as long as you're building the business. But if you actually learn how to implement the right key things, now you can delegate. What people forget is this formula for scalability of any business. The formula for scalability. Everyone's like, hey, you know what? I want to start a business. Hey, I want to scale that business, but they haven't got their first client yet. But the only way that you can scale a business is to create the systems and processes. That's the first step that allows you to delegate by putting people in place. You can't delegate and teach people how to do a job if you haven't put together the system and process on how to actually do that job. Or you're just going to stand
Right.
over and tell them how to do every little thing that needs to be happening, versus creating that system so that way you can bring people in to delegate it. So you create the system and process that allows you to delegate, so that way you can eliminate you from the process. So I guarantee you those gunnies are not doing the same things that those lance corporals, sergeants, corporals, and lance corporals are doing, because they delegated everyone else that's underneath them, right?
That's right.
And then when they eliminate them from the process, now they get to participate inside of the business, the
Right.
organization, whatever it be. Those sergeant majors, those CEOs, those gunnies, they're there to participate and watch over the people that are underneath them, that they delegated a certain task, so that way they can make sure that things are being ran smoothly, and allows you to manage and participate to allow the organization to run. So when it comes to being a leader inside of an organization, or what I've took away from the Marine Corps, or I took away from even martial arts, is having that discipline, but also the key steps of organizations of how to lead and how to communicate, so that way we can create a scalable business that's able to lead without us even being present. Because a lot of people, I just had a conversation with someone the other day, and she when I got on the call with her, she was like, yeah, I love what I do. I do this 7 days a week and I don't get a break or anything like that. I can't remember the last time on vacation. I looked at her and I go, why? It just sounds miserable. It just sounds miserable. And she looked at me and was like, because I love what I do. And I go, but you got no life. I mean,
No.
you don't have, she can never leave her business, because I invited her to come to my event in January in DC. And she goes, I couldn't go out there. And I go, why can't you come to my event? She goes, because if I leave, I got no one to do my work for me. And then I'm missing out on opportunities. I said, well, that's a problem.
That's a
If you
problem.
if you can't leave your business, then you didn't create the right system and process that allows you to move and do what you want to do. I mean, I look at this just this year alone for 2023, and I made a commitment to myself that I was going to make my business completely different. Where before, in the past, I would always make sure that my family revolved around my business. And it was like, hey, you know what? You guys are coming along with me and doing this. And it was always business first. And my priorities were completely wrong. Like I would put like business, then I would put God, then I put my kids and put my wife. And then I had a wake up call and I was like, you know what? My priorities are not straight. So I had to shift my priorities where it's like, hey, you know what? It's God, wife, kids, then business. And I look at 2023, I'm like, man, we really had an amazing, blessed year for my family, because I try to take my family. I have 4 kids and my wife. I try to take my family to as much as I can when I travel, because I speak at a lot of events and do a lot of workshops and stuff. But I'm like, man, just this year alone, I've been able to go to New Jersey. I took my family to Florida for a week and a half. Then we went to St. Louis, where my family's at, immediately after that for an event that I was hosting for 2 weeks. Then we went to Europe to visit my wife's family in France for 2.5 weeks. And then we did a beach trip for a week. And then we just got back from Florida again for my mastermind event where I hosted for 2 weeks. And then now we're here. I'm like, man, I remember I never even saw the beach until I was 17 years old, or been in an airplane since 17 years old. And so just doing that all this year, I'm like, man, we truly are blessed. But I made sure that my family was involved in everything that I did, because that is leadership. I am learning how to lead my family up front. I am learning how to lead them with purpose and to let them know what priorities are. And my priority is them more than anything else. And my business would be nothing if it wasn't for them. So if we're thinking about a leadership from a business standpoint, yeah, it's creating the right processes and systems so we can delegate to free us up to be part of the business. But same thing in your family. Like your family, your kids, they got to be part of what you're doing, but they also got to see the mission and the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. Because if not, all they're going to do is hear daddy's working. Daddy's got to travel. Daddy's got to go do this. But they don't really understand why. And so I try so hard to bring my kids up on stage with me whenever I'm speaking. I let them be part of the event wherever I go. I let them see me from stage and watch me be able to interact with people, because that's how you lead your family, is they learn by watching, by doing. Same thing in the Marine Corps. We learn by watching the people above us and be able to implement what they're doing so that we can be better leaders and better warfighting machines.
No doubt. JR, you spoke something that I think I would love to hear, how you made that transition for yourself, man, because a lot of veterans, when they get out, they lose that sense of purpose. They lose that sense of mission. And it leads to quite honestly, some veterans' demise, where they're committing suicide, they end up homeless. And if you could talk a little bit about what was it like for you when you transitioned? What were some things that you implemented and put in place that helped guided you to become the person that you are now, man?
So the first thing is community. Well, the first thing is purpose. You got to know what your purpose is and why you're doing what you're doing and why God has you on this earth. And that purpose needs to be that driving factor, and so much so that it scares you. And there's a leader that I've been following for a long time, and he's you might know who he is, but his name's Bedros Keuilian, and he owns Fit Body Boot Camp, one of the biggest fitness franchises there is, and he's also built multiple different businesses, and he's a 9-figure earner and stuff like that. And I've been to several of these events. I've met with him, talked with him, sat down with him one-on-one, and just really learned a lot from him. And one thing that he said about 15 years ago that I learned from him was, your why and your purpose needs to be so scary that if you don't do this, then this will happen. So for him, if you know his story, he's an immigrant that came into the US that built the Fit Body Boot Camp through the recession of 2008. And when he did that, all odds were against him. And he had to figure out, it's like, hey, you know what? For him, he said, if I don't get up and do this, if I don't send that text message, if I don't send that email, if I don't make that phone call, if I don't show up to work on time, if I don't work out, if I don't connect with this person, whatever it may be, then he was going to go home, find his family cold blood murdered on the floor. And it was so strong to him that, I mean, this is a guy that when he had license in his country, his family was so poor that they used to put gasoline on his head to burn his hair off to be able to cleanse the lice off of his head. And so for him to say that, it had to be so strong and intense that it scared him, saying, you know what, I need to do this because this will happen. I mean, but it's such a strong fire and belief to get him up out of bed to be able to do those things. And that's where a lot of people fail. They don't have that purpose that's so strong. They're like, hey, you know what? I'm a fitness trainer, so I want to help as many people lose weight and get strong. That's really cool. That's great. Or I'm a martial arts instructor. I help as many kids get black belts. That's great. But that's not a purpose for you. Like, that's not the thing that's going to drive you. That's enough that's going to be superficial. Like, I own a fitness business. I helped probably more than 1,000+ people lose weight, get strong, and be healthier and stuff like that. But guess what? Over a period of time, that I got burnt out and tired of hating doing what I was doing because it was for them. It wasn't for myself. And yes, I was making a difference, but it wasn't the thing that was going to drive me out of bed. And so we need to really figure out, what is that driving factor? What is that purpose to be able to get us to where we're going? If we don't have a vision about where we're going, even someone just getting out and be like, hey, you know what? I want to be a good citizen and make a difference and make an impact to do the best thing that I can possible, even if it's doing the dishes or scrubbing floors or cleaning toilets, whatever it is. I'm going to have my creed, be committed to it, and do my best, and no matter what that is. And that's where personal self-development growth. That's understanding your worth. And if you don't understand or believe that you have worth, which we all do, you need to start there and be like, hey, you are valuable. God created you for a reason. It's even in his promise in his word where he gives a hope and a purpose, a life, a future and hope. Jeremiah 29:11. And so we need to stand strong on his word about what that is and really believe that we have a purpose in there. I mean, and that's why a lot of suicide rate is so high, because Marines, sailors, soldiers, airmen, whoever, they get out and I mean, like I said before, well, they take off their uniform and their entire identity is gone. Everything I've known from the first 4 years, 8 years, 6 years, whatever it may be. I mean, gosh, I know people in their retirement. They spent 22 years plus in the Marine Corps, and they get out and they're absolutely miserable and sad and depressed because they don't have anything else. All they known was the Marine Corps. And then when they step out in the civilian world, they realize how big and dangerous it is, that no one's really going to stand at parade rest and listen to you when you're talking to them. Hey, Boots, stand at parade rest, stand at attention when I'm talking to you. Why do you think you can talk to me while you're doing? I can't tell you how many times I wanted to slap someone across the face because they want to disrespect me. I mean, that's something we learned in the Corps, and it's still hard today. Right. But if you can't really figure out what your identity and what your purpose is, it's going to be really hard to get through life. We got to stand strong. We got to figure out what that is. And for me, that's where it started. I knew that I had two choices. I was either going to make one turn where I'm going to be successful. I knew where I was going to go. I wanted to get married. I wanted to have family. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never wanted to work for someone. I never wanted anyone to tell me what I had to do, even though customers tell us what we got to do. Or I could be miserable, do whatever, go hang out with my old friends, my old crew, and doing whatever I wanted to do. And just, who knows where my life was going to end up. But I knew right off the bat that I was going to make a choice to be successful, because I knew that people were looking up to me. They looked up to me as a hero, which, that's a sensitive word for a lot of people, but I'm sure for you, people look to you as a hero. Say, hey, you know what? Sacrifice your life and your time and your energy to protect me. And then you have a job and an obligation to really own up to what that is. And you got to, or people just don't want to do it. And it's hard, man. I mean, even me, I still fight demons sometimes, but I always go back to like, what is that purpose? What is that why? What's driving me out of bed? And just like with Badger Coolian, when he would say like, he would find it, his family cold blood murdered. For me, it's really the thing that holds deep inside of my gut and my core is knowing that I'm the provider for my family. And I never want my family to come to me and say, Daddy, I'm hungry. I mean, your kids are always going to say I'm hungry because they just want snacks or whatever. But I'm talking about being hungry.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
That's the thing that terrifies me. And that's the thing that gets me out of bed to do what I do. No one's going to tell you got to wake up. No one's going to tell you to get up and do this podcast or go show up to work or get to the gym and work out or to eat healthy or to do all these things. You have to make a choice to be able to do what you got to do. That's your creed. That's having the commitment. That's having the discipline and being resilient, because life sucks. It's hard. There's a lot of days that's going to pull you down. And even if you're in a place where you're making a lot of money, I guarantee you, we still have hard times. And it's always going back to reminding yourself of why you're doing what you're doing to push you through. Even me, I have a lot of hard days, and I have to remind myself why I'm doing what I'm doing. There's days I'm like, man, maybe I just go get a job in W-2. And then I'm like, why? I could put the same amount of effort in less time and go and make as much money that I would make in a year and get it within 2 sales or whatever.
Right.
But so it's always reminding myself, it's like, hey, you know what? Get out there and do it. If I'm not making the money I want, it's my fault. It's no one else's fault but myself. It's because I didn't want it bad enough. I didn't get up there and make those extra calls. I didn't do the things that needed to happen. But what is that purpose? What is that thing that's going to drive you out of bed, that's sitting in that core, that's burning so strong that if you don't do this, then this is going to happen. If I don't show up for these calls, then my kids are going to look at me and say, Dad, I'm hungry. If I don't show up to that event, then I'm not going to be able to pay my house bill. If I'm not going to show up and make those connections or do the things that I have to do, then guess what? My family's the one suffering, not just me. And we all need to find what that is. We all got to find that one thing that burns, that's so strong in your core that you're going to get up and do whatever it does. Because if not, then this is the consequence.
JR, I love the message, man. And it's so empowering. I just hope that my veteran listeners that's listening to this podcast could actually take heed to it and actually share it with a family member or a friend that they know that could be struggling. So JR, you made the transition, brother, to entrepreneurship. You're a speaker, you're an author. Can you tell us a little bit about the book that you put out, man, and tell us a little bit about what it is when you get up there to speak on stage? What is it that you're trying to deliver to your audience, brother?
You know what? Every time I stand on a stage, it's usually tailored for that audience. And I have a rule of thumb is I always show up plenty time early to get to know people in the audience before I set feet on that stage, because I want to know what the hearts is of what what they need most before I get up and speak. So my friends and colleagues, they laugh at me because it'll be coming up the day of the event. They're like, "Hey, Jared, do you know what you're talking about today?" I was like, "No, not yet. I will though. I'll know what I'll know what's there." But you have to understand, I've been teaching since I was about 10 years old. And I'm this little kid standing in front of a room and able to command a room of 20, 30 plus people in martial arts and teaching them how to move coherently to be able to do specific tasks, keep them safe, and be able to become better self-defense, martial arts, or whatever it may be. So for me, being able to lead and teach on a very specific way is very easy for me to command a room to be able to do that. So when I go to an event and I'm speaking from a stage or being on a podcast, whatever, I want to know who's the audience and what is the best value I can give for them at that moment. Like I had no clue what we're going to talk about today until we started getting to know a little bit about your story, your show, and the questions that you're going to ask. But I practice my language on a continuous basis. I practice what my message is. I practice what I'm able to teach, what I'm able to deliver, because a confused mind is never going to buy. So if I'm not clear on my messaging, my offering, and what I'm able to deliver, well, then I'm taken away from the audience and they're never going to be able to receive anything that can serve them and help them grow. But I always lead with a heart that serves. I always tell people you gotta serve first and ask later. So the more that I can serve people and more that I can give value to be able to help other people grow, the more that they're going to trust me and see me as a credible individual to want to listen to and be able to get more help from. And so speaking from stage, my main goal is what can I do to really help people feel differently to take action? I'm not about just motivation or inspiring. I'm all about helping people take action in what they do. So I try to always lead people with like 3 tactical strategies. What are 3 tactical strategies that they can lead with right now that they can implement to execute that can help them become better in their business or their personal life? And so every time I step on stage, that's what they're going to do. Inside my book, The Success Guide to Building Your Coaching Empire, I go through some key things. One is the foundational pieces of your business. There's pretty much in the book, I think I go through 5 different foundational pieces, but there's 6 different foundational pieces. I didn't add one in there because I didn't start making it part of the process until after it was printed. But the first process is really understanding your mission. You got to know your purpose, your destination, and where you're going to go. That's your vision. You got to know where you're going to go so you can create the process that's going to help you get there. Then you got to get really clear on who your perfect client is. What's your big promise, which is your messaging? What is your big 7, which is the problems that you solve? And then what is your irresistible offer? So we got to make sure that we have all those key items together before we can actually execute the business or the offer that we're going to do to be able to serve and help people. The next piece, once I get through the foundations, now I go through 4 key steps that they need to do daily. I call them your non-negotiables to help them really build their business. And this is what I call your daily pile. So your daily pile is, if you guys have a piece of paper you're listening to this, you can write on the side of your papers, put PILE. These are 4 non-negotiable tasks that you need to do daily that's going to make an impact in your business. And when I came up with the daily pile, it came from a place of because I built 6 different businesses at this time. It's like, what did I do on a regular basis to help me get to where I'm at? And the P was producing daily content. If no one knows who you are, no one's going to know who you are. They're not going to buy from you. So we got to produce daily content. This doesn't just have to be on social media. This can be on blogging. This can be networking in your local community. This can be, wherever, email content, whatever it may be. You got to choose your medium of where your audience is at. That's why I take you through the foundations of knowing the problems and who your client is and what your messaging is first, because we got to know how we're going to serve and where our clients are hanging out at. So you got to produce daily content to be able to serve your audience. The second piece, which is I in your daily pile, and this is improving your products and services and your customer experience. Every day as a leader, like what do we say in the Marine Corps? Continuous growth, right? We always got to make sure we're doing growth. So same thing as an entrepreneur. We need to make sure that we're always, every single day, we're doing something that's improving us as a leader and as an entrepreneur in our products and services, but also our customer experience. So it's improving your products and services as well as your customer experience. So we need to think, even if it's a small thing, doesn't need to be anything big. Even if it's a small thing, we need to think about what can we do differently to make Michael's experience better with me? What can I do differently to make our products better? Because if we're still doing the same thing today that we did yesterday, guess what? Our competition is going to keep passing us along. And now people are if you keep doing the same thing today with your current clients, they're going to get bored and find someone new that can serve them. So we need to
Right.
make sure we're constantly evolving. I mean, if you look at my offers from 12 months ago, they're completely different. I probably added 10, 15 different offers since 12 months ago. I'm always thinking about what does my audience want? So what do we need? What can we do to make this better? That helps us stand out. And I mean, the great thing about being an entrepreneur is you don't have to do the same thing all the time. You can always change. You can always flip. You can always pivot. And I'm always, I mean, my offers are constantly people come to my events and like, Jared, how can you do this for me? I was like, I can help you do your event. Let me put together an offer for you. And I put together a process. I put together, what does that event look? I put together, how do we make this happen and things. So listening to your audience and doing that. The third piece when it comes to your daily pile, remember these are 4 non-negotiable tasks, is leadership. There's 3 pieces of leadership that everyone here needs to understand. And I take the example of Jesus Christ because he was the greatest leader that ever walked this earth. And what did Jesus do when it came to him leading the people? Well, he first went to go lead himself. He went up to the mountains, he went and prayed, and he went to be with the Father, and he learned to grow himself before he did anything else. This is something we have to do daily for ourselves to become better leaders. We need to make sure we're listening to podcasts, we're reading content, we're listening to content, we're joining communities and masterminds and different things like that. That's going to help us grow. So what are you doing to lead yourself? The second thing we need to do to lead, that Jesus did, went to go lead himself, then he went to go lead his disciples. Well, for us, our disciples is our team. So we went to go lead ourselves to help us become better. And now we're going to go lead our team. Now, some of you are listening are probably saying, hey, you know what? I'm a one-man show. Well, you probably have someone that helped you with graphics designing. You probably had someone that helped you with social media. You probably had someone that helped you, make your bed, cook your food, or clean your house, or whatever it may be. Have anyone that helps you with anything that assists you, that helps you get to where you're going as part of your team. And it's your job as a leader to make sure that you are leading them well. Because most of the time, things fail due to lack of communication, a lack of expectations. So we got to make sure we're leading our team well. And the third thing that Jesus did, and after he went to go lead himself, then he went to go lead his team. Now he's going to go lead the people. Well, who are the people for us? That's our clients. So we need to make sure we're delivering at a high value what we promised to deliver to our clients. And most people don't do that. Most people are not doing the things that they say they're going to do. They promise certain things, but they never show up and actually deliver. So you got to lead yourself, lead your team, and lead your clients. And the last piece of your daily pile, which is E, and it's expanding your network. So every day, we need to try to meet at least one new person that we can add to our network. If you focus on these 4 things daily, I can almost guarantee you, and you're consistent, you're going to see an uptick in your business. But if you forget one of these things every single day, you're going to see a downtick in your business. It's the continuous growth that we need to do to constantly improve ourselves that's going to keep our business moving forward. Like, it doesn't matter if there's a pandemic or recession, COVID, or whatever may happen. If you are focusing, you're preparing yourself for the day that you get ambushed, which is another topic that I go through. But learning to prepare yourself for the day that you get attacked and we go through a pandemic, you lose a client, you lose an employee, but you got the tools and resources that's going to help you get you to where you want to go. You're never going to fail. The only person that's going to fail, that's going to stop you from succeeding and failing, is you. And the only way you're going to fail is if you quit. So if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, like we tell in the Marine Corps, keep head down, one foot in front of the other, keep moving forward, you're going to achieve that destination. But you got to be consistent with it. You got to show up, and you got to be committed and resilient, even in those difficult times.
No doubt.
So, and then last
JR,
oh wait, someone
go ahead.
4 non-negotiables. Yeah.
I was going to touch on something, man, that I hear within what you're telling in regards to the framework, man. And for me, it's not get complacent. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I hear in your message and your story and how you run your business. But what I truly, truly love, man, is how you apply biblical principles within your business, man. Can you tell us a little bit, man, about why you chose to do that and how big faith is a part of your business, man?
Yeah, well, God has to be number one, because without him, we're nothing. And it goes back to priorities, because, before, for the longest time, I have no shame about talking about my faith, but I'm not a person that's going to be a Bible thumping and do it, because Jesus went out and loved everyone. And so I will not put a label saying I'm a Christian owned business, but I'm going to lead my life that requires a gospel answer. And if I can make a difference through the language and the Holy Spirit that God has instilled within me, then I'm going to do what I can. And, I have people in my community that are Jewish, the Hindu, that are agnostic. I mean, everything you can. And gosh, they are some of the most amazing people. And if God can use me to plant those seeds, then I'll make that difference. I mean, my mission in life is to disciple my kids to be disciples of Christ. And we are created to make other disciples in Christ. And so everything that I do needs to be an example of him and what he does. And And if I try to take all the glory, I mean, here's the thing. For the longest time, I made a lot of money in business. I made a lot of money on my own in business and without bringing him into it. And I was miserable as hell. I mean, I was
Hmm.
burnt out. I was tired. I was constantly hustling, grinding. I could never get my energy. I could never do it. But then I'll tell you what, when I actually say, you know what, God, I can't do this anymore. And finally I'm in the hospital, almost dying because of COVID from all the stress and everything. And then I came back and was like, I want you to be part of what I'm doing. I want you to be involved in my business. And part of having that relationship with Christ is he's hungry for our intimacy. Like he is saying, hey, you know what? Knocking the door will open, but he's just waiting for us to saying, hey, you know what? Come to me and I will be with you. And if we really just step in, it's not just saying those prayers when you need something, it's saying those prayers all the time because he's talking to you all the time. The problem is we're so loud with everything else in the world that we can't understand or even recognize his voice. And there's tools and practices and strategies to be able to learn how to hear the voice of God. And when you start doing that and you allow him to be part of what you're doing, I was only able to travel and do everything we've been able to do this year because God has given me that freedom. He has given me the freedom where every time my bank account starts getting low, he brings another client that starts getting it back up. And it just goes like this. And I never worry a beat. I never skip a beat because he's always protecting and providing for me and my family. And so the answer is simple. Why do I make Christ and why do I make God? And here's the other thing too. It's not just God. A lot of people will say God. A lot of people will say spiritual, but it's the Trinity. It's three. It's God, Father, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And it's through
Hmm.
Jesus Christ. Because the Bible even says, for God so loved the world, whoever believes in me shall not perish but have everlasting life. But we can't get to heaven if it isn't through the Jesus Christ. So it's really important to me as I run my business and what I do that Jesus is just as much part of it. The Holy Spirit, who is the gift that teaches me and then guides me, is part of what I'm doing through the decisions that I'm doing. And that leads me to the cross. And so if I'm not doing that, then I'm not going to get anywhere. And he has to be just as much involved in everything that I do. And it goes back to my story. I'm only here because of him. And if you go and read my book, I talk a little bit about it. If you listen to any podcast that I do, I talk about it all the time that, I survived a suicide bombing at a walking checkpoint on February 7th, 2007. And I was the closest person to this blast, standing about 6 to 7 feet away from this guy that lifted his arm, strapped to C4 and blew himself up. Killed my sergeant major that was staying about, right where I was at for about 45 minutes beforehand. Another Marine, David Emery, lost both of his legs. We killed a female Marine, Jennifer Purcell, and then our interpreter, Jimmy, and many other injuries during this blast. And yet I was the closest one. And I stood up and I walked, and I had a speck of blood in the back of my flak. And when I got back from the deployment, that happened February 7th, 2007. And when I got back from the deployment same year, my mom was like, hey, did something happen? And I went to her, and I was like, yeah, but I saw a lot. I seen a lot of death. And I picked up body parts and heads and arms and legs and everything like that. But what specifically? I don't talk about all the details all the time. She goes, well, I was at church in January, and there was a special speaker, and he was prophesying over me, and he asked me if I had a child that was overseas, and I said, yeah. And she said that my son was over there. He says, I don't want to scare you, but something really bad is getting ready to happen. He's going to be surrounded by 1,000 angels and not be touched. And if you know the scripture, that's Psalm 91. 1,000 may fall your side and 10,000 your right hand, but you shall not be touched. And you go back and read the whole verse. And so when I start thinking about what my purpose is and where I'm at and what I'm doing and why I include Christ and God into all of that I do, is because he has brought me to where I'm at. And I'm on a mission to really do what he's called me to do. And it would be foolish of me if I didn't. And I'm at where I'm at because of him.
Wow, wow, wow. Hey man, your story is touching me, bro. I'm not even gonna lie to you, because it's resonating as you're telling me your story, man. Um, wow. That's amazing, man. If Before we get ready to wrap up and get out of here, JR, man, our audience has heard your story, man, heard about your transition. What are some key takeaways? What are some key lessons that listeners can take from your story, man, and just take that and just making those some like tangible things that it could start doing today, not wait till next week, next year, or anything like that. But like you said, from your message or from your story, start taking action.
You could do the daily pile, but I'll tell you, whenever I start to working with anyone, I really identify three things that's keeping people from true growth. And this is in
Yeah.
personal life, and this is also in business. And I hate the word mindset, just so you know, because it's overused for everything. Just like the word spiritual, people get confused by it because back in the day when you said you were spiritual, it meant something. Now it means you're a woo-woo crazy person. Excuse my language. But the reality is, it doesn't align with it. But we got to be very specific on this thing, because there's the three things. If you want to have significant growth and in your business or in your personal life, it starts with your belief in who you are. Most people are not where they're at because they don't even believe that they are worthy to have what they deserve. We need to believe what we need to have, because you cannot excel or have any type of growth until you fix this, until you fix this. Like, it has to be down in the core in your heart saying, you know what, I deserve this. I'm going to go after this, and I'm going to be able to charge what I want to charge what I deserve, and to be able to go after and get what I get. Because most people are not going to be able to get there to start here. You can't just go out there and run a marathon until you convince yourself, I'm going to train and run a marathon. If you do, right. I mean, I know some Marines that just showed up, never trained and did it. They were hurting pretty bad. But very few people are just going to go out there and just run a marathon without having any training. They have to convince themselves saying, you know what, I believe that I can do this and I'm going to do it. That's the first step, because most people are struggling. And I can increase people from making $0 to $5 to $10 to $15, $20,000 a month, or even from $10 to $30 to $50,000 a month by changing these key things. That starts with belief. And I sit down and I go over with them and I convince them of why they are worthy, of what they can sell it for, and increasing the rates. The second thing they need to do is they got to change their offer, because most people don't want to charge $5,000 for a 90-day program because they feel like no one's going to buy it. But then no one's going to buy it because you don't even believe it's worth $5,000. You have to believe that you are worth $5,000 for 90 days of your time and your service and your expertise before you can go out there and sell it. If you try to sell something for $5,000, but in the back of your head and your gut, you're like, oh, are they even going to buy? People are going to feel it. They're going to know it. So you have to believe, like for me, my regular services to work with me, no joke, is $50,000. And for me, that's a 6-month program where it's a done for you service. I'm going to help you. And I feel sick every time I sell that. I'm not lying to you, because I feel like I undercharge what I'm doing, because I know the value that I'm giving you. Right. I know what I'm worth. I know what the ROI is and what I can help produce for any one of my clients that invest that amount of money with me if they execute the things that I tell them to do. It's a full done for you service, and that's what I charge them for. So it starts with belief. Then the second thing is creating the right offer that matches that belief. And the third thing is you got to change that message that connects your offer with your belief. Because a confused mind is never going to buy. And if your message isn't really clear and understanding that this is what I'm going to help you with and where I'm going to help take you with, and people have to guess what you're even going to do, you're going to lose every opportunity. Because they're going to sit there and keep thinking about, like, oh man, what does he even do? No, you got to make sure you have the right belief, understand your worth, the right offer that's going to match that belief, and then the right message that's going to bring it all together. If you could do those three things today, your business will have an uptick in your growth. Because I've done it hundreds, if not more times, with so many different people. And even for myself, sometimes when I feel like I'm undercharging, I'm like, you know what? I need to charge it. Even my coach, I believe every coach needs to have a coach. Even my coach told me, he was like, dude, you're undercharging yourself. I was like, what? He said, you need to double your rates. Because my $50,000 offer, I used to only sell it for 25. He says, you need to double your rates. And I was like, no one's going to buy that. And he was like, yes, they will. Because he had more belief in me than I did for myself. Wow. And so about a year and a half ago, he challenged me. I was like, your next client, I want you to do it. Less than 2 weeks, I sold 2 of them at $50,000. And that, so I keep moving forward and keep doing that. So we need to make sure that we understand our belief, but we also need to make sure our offer and our messages are all connected.
Absolutely, man. Well, JR, man, it's been a pleasure to have you here, man, to share your story, share your message with how you are. You're impacting people and changing people's lives, man. How can people get a hold of you, man, if they want to get you on their podcast, if they want to book you for a speaking engagement or do business with your company?
The best way to do it, I always tell everyone, come join my community, the Business Leaders Network. And our mission within the BLN community is to build a community of servant leaders. So if you are an entrepreneur, if you are someone that believes that you are a servant leader and want to make a big difference and impact to really help other people grow, I'd love to invite you there. The website is www.blncommunity.com. That's blncommunity.com. I give the first month for $37 and come test drive us, see if it's a good fit for you. And I can really tell, like for me, when it really made it possible to get to where I'm at was being in a room of people that were doing things bigger than me. When I switched to the online space in about 2017, I was just looking to make about $2,000 a month online. I was like, oh, that sounds like a lot of money online. All these people, anyone doing bigger, it's like they just had it made, or they grew up in the rich family and stuff like that. And I didn't know it was possible. I was one of those guys that just went online saying how to make money online, went to Google University, and then all these spam things that are coming up. And it's like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. But I did what I do best, and I was like, you know what, I need a coach. I mean, I learned from what we did in the Marine Corps. What do we do in the Marine Corps? Go ask someone that's doing it better than you. You go find
That's
someone, you
right.
learn, you grow. And so I joined a mastermind, and I'll tell you, it absolutely changed my life, because I went to that first event with them, and I was in a room full of like 300 people. And this is when I was only helping fitness coaches and personal trainers and wellness coaches and things like that. So I went in that room. It's like there's about 300 people in there, and their majority of them are all doing like 10,000, 20, 30, 50, $100,000 a month online. And I'm like, I got more experience than almost every single person in this room. Why can't I do what they're doing and do it better? And so I challenged myself. First, it goes back to belief. I had to believe it was possible. I had to believe I was worth it. So being in that room and part of a community to really push me to be better than where I was changed everything for me. Because when I left that mastermind, guess what? I made a commitment that I was going to be the best one in there. In less than 4 months, I was one of the top 5 people in that entire room. And I got a trophy over here to prove it. So where I was like $1,000 a month. And so going in there and really making a difference, being part of a community, really changed my entire outlook of business, of life, of community, and just almost my perspective of how to actually connect with entrepreneurs and help them really achieve growth. I can't help anyone grow their business and get to where they want to go until they start believing that they are worth more than where they're at. If they stay stuck where they're at and keep believing where they're at, I don't care how much money they pay me, and I don't care how much I coach them, how many calls I do with them. If they don't start changing and shifting and believing that they are worth more than where they're at, I can't help them build their business. But if they start trusting me and believing that I can help them get to where they want to go and start trusting the process, they're going to explode their business. And I can almost guarantee it, because I've done it with so many people. So they got to be able to take that belief. So anyone that wants to be part of a community, because that's what changed it for me. I have an amazing community. We have another event coming up January 18th and 19th in the DC area, right close to Quantico. Well, mainly DC, but in Arlington. But 18th and 19th. And I got a lineup of amazing speakers that honestly, I'm coming with my notepad and going to learn from them. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. But they can go to blnlive.com and grab their ticket. Anyone that signs up before the end of November, I'm giving them 4 free months to our BLN community just by purchasing their ticket. I don't care if they get a general ticket. I just want to be able to serve them and get them involved and part of a community that's going to really push them, help them grow. So it's blnlive.com.
Absolutely. Gerald, thank you so much for being on here, man. Thank you for giving your wealth of knowledge and experience to our listeners. Hopefully they took some notes, jot some things down that could just start implementing and taking action, man. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you leave a message. And last but not least, make sure you share it with the family, share it with a friend, because I know that this message, this episode can help someone. God bless.
Can't complain at all. Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.